Welcome to the Movies of the Damned podcast. My name is Kyle Grant, and I'm sitting here with my friend and published horror author, John Hunt. If you enjoy what you hear here today, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our Facebook page, and follow us on both Instagram and Twitter at Damned Movies. Email us any questions, comments, and suggestions to moviesofthedamned@gmail.com. For further details on John's published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Today, we'll be discussing Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg's 2004 horror comedy, Shaun of the Dead. The film follows underachiever Shaun and his roommate Ed as they try to survive the zombie apocalypse as Shaun attempts to win back his girlfriend Liz and protect his mother. Ultimately, Ed, Shaun's mom, and many of his friends end up getting killed, but Shaun and Liz reunite and survive. The film ends as Shaun heads out to the shed to play some video games with Ed the zombie. John, opening thoughts on the film?
This is another zombie horror comedy. I'm a huge fan of Simon Pegg. I know the other guy from Hot Fuzz and some other films, but I know Simon Pegg from the Star Trek reboot and other films that he's done, and he's always fun to watch and he's always entertaining to watch. So, just turning on this movie, I've seen it before, obviously, but turning it on again, it's like it just put me in a good mood. It's a really fun movie.
No, exactly. And this is one I've seen a few times since it first came out. And I find this is one that, even though obviously after the first time you know exactly what's going to happen, it's one that you can watch over and over again because there's so many subtle, good jokes throughout this film. Very well written, very well filmed. There's just a lot of good things that we can get into throughout this because this is so much more than just a horror film or a comedy. It's an overall great film.
Yeah, and I would agree with that assessment. I think that's actually a good way of putting it. It's like you can watch it over again and see something funny that you might have missed before, and because of that, it adds a level of freshness to it, even though you know what the plot is and you know who's going to die and who's going to live, and you know all that stuff, but it doesn't really matter too much because you're seeing new things that you might have missed before. And you're appreciating them again because it's like you said, it's so well written, so well shot. Like there's just a lot of good things to say about this film.
Yeah, and you know what? And there's something to that, right? And so a film that we recently did for the podcast here, High Tension. Great the first time through, but I wasn't overly excited to watch it again for the podcast. And then when we watched it again, it's like I don't know if I'd be interested in going back to the well for that one. But this one, I don't know if I can watch it too many times. So obviously, I'm not going to watch it every day, but every couple of years, you can go back to this one and enjoy seeing it again.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The same thing with High Tension. I just think like the first time I saw it, I wasn't watching too many horror films of that I don't know, impact, I would say. So like the uber violence and some of the sequences in there were quite shocking, even for a horror guy like such as myself. So it's like one of those ones where you have to kind of psych yourself up to watch it again because you're going to see some things that are quite disturbing, and then you watch it through the second time, and the impact is not obviously as strong as the first visceral time that you see it, and then you're able to digest what you're actually seeing there and see the Scotch tape holding it all together. And I wouldn't say that I disliked it a second time. I would just say my appreciation for it had certainly lessened, and I don't think it'd be a certain. I'd watch it again, but like it wouldn't be like for a while, and I'd only watch it again if someone who hadn't seen it was like, "Hey, I want to see that film," and then I'd watch it with them. You know what I mean? But other than that, I don't think I'd go and put it on myself.
And that was exactly my point. So a film like that, and I just bring it up as an example because it was a recent episode, has like significant diminishing returns each time you watch it, whereas this one doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And not only does it not have diminishing returns, it might actually get better with age. And because again, there's so many subtle jokes and just well-written parts in this film that you might not pick up on all of them the first time. So it's worth that second, that third, that fourth watch through, just because of how clever this film is.
Hmm.
So to get into the movie here, we're following, as I kind of described in the synopsis, underachiever Sean. And you kind of pick up right away as the audience that he's quite a clever, smart man, but he really is just that kind of an underachiever who's really pulled down by his friend Ed and just wants to drink all the time and isn't really accomplishing much in life. And the film kind of starts out with his girlfriend Liz finally having enough and dumping him kind of on the eve of the zombie apocalypse. And
Hmm.
then that kind of sets this movie in motion. But
Hmm.
just before we kind of get into the zombie apocalypse, one thing that I noticed watching it through this time is that there's a lot of scenes kind of pre-apocalypse that then get brought back during the apocalypse. But obviously, there's alive people pre, and then there's the zombies post, but kind of reenacting the same things. Did you pick up on any of those?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like they're setting up the because it's a fairly it's obviously a big city. Well, they're obviously in a big country in a big city, but it's also like there's communities within communities. So these are the same people that would be in his community because the obviously the underachiever and his friend they don't really go to too many places. They go to the one bar, they go to the same grocery store. Like so they're gonna run into the same people normally every day. So they set that up. Um, to show you that okay here's how they were pre-zombie and here's how they are afterwards, and it also ties you into the character development because now you're seeing the new character them becoming zombies through the view of the main character's eyes, and the realization that this is not this is real and this is really happening and they have to deal with it.
And they have to deal with it, but at first, they're not dealing with it because again, Sean is just so oblivious to kind of the world going around him. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is kind of when he wakes up and the zombie apocalypse is in. It's going on. It's happening all around him, but he's so oblivious and he's so just set in his normal routine that he walks to that convenience store. He has no idea about everything happening around him, and kind of just like walks through this killing field oblivious. Like I just absolutely love that part. I thought it was so well shot. I just thought it was really beautifully put together.
Yeah, you know what? And I didn't notice it the first time that I seen it, but that was a good one shot. When he leaves his
Oh,
house, it
amazing.
was an amazing one shot that follows him all the way to the like I thought, wow, this is really good. Like you really appreciate it. Like I really appreciated how well shot that was, and it was fun to watch it. Like you know what I mean? Like, it's just because it's a different way to film, obviously, right? Because it's not too often do you see one shots because they're so hard to do, and but then you watch it and you can see why they're worth doing because when they're pulled off, like when they're done well, they're just fun to watch.
Exactly. And you kind of said earlier already in this episode that this film puts a smile on your face. And that's exactly how I would describe that scene.
Hmm.
Puts a smile on my face. And as we talked about before, when we reviewed One Shot of the Dead or 1917, yes, it's presented to the viewer in one shot, but there's no way they could pull that thing off in one
For
shot.
sure,
And
for
so
sure.
again, I find myself trying to find where could they have cut, where could they have done that? And as you said, it was so well shot. It was tougher for me to find it in that sequence. But again, I just had to bring it up because of how much I enjoyed everything
Hmm.
from
Hmm.
the set to the background to just how it was presented in that to the viewer in that scene.
Yeah, for sure. And like it also set up like how sudden the apocalypse can be. Like he goes to bed, everything's fine. He wakes up, and that's how fast it spread. Right? It's surrounding him, and because he's so stuck in his routine, he doesn't take the time to look up or take the time to notice that's what's going on around him. It was just a really, really great scene to set up the rest of the film, and I can't really say too much more about it. It was just so well done.
No, exactly. And s- one thing that I picked up on this film, because again, it did come out a while ago now, like 2004, man. So 16 years ago. Like
Hmm.
again, the more we go back and do some of these movies that seem like they came out yesterday, but they came out like a decade and a half ago, just makes me feel old. Like, oh my gosh. Um, but one thing that I noticed that the current generation is gonna have no idea channel surfing.
Yeah.
remember all the scenes where I think it was maybe Ed with the remote control, and he's just like kind of going from channel to channel to channel to channel, and you're only hearing like a half a sentence on each channel. And it was a very interesting thing because it was kind of trying to reveal to the viewer about the zombie apocalypse, but he was just going from channel to channel, so you really weren't sure what was happening. But people of today, because a lot of people don't even have cable anymore.
Yeah.
Channel surfing is a thing of the past. I just thought that was an interesting tidbit I thought I'd bring up.
Yeah, for sure. Like most people do have streaming, do streaming, right? Like there's not too many people that still use cable services or whatever, right? Like even the old
Yeah.
cable services are now becoming streamers, right? So like Stack TV and all that type of stuff, and HBO, like they're all becoming streaming services, whereas before they were like cable specials that you'd have on, right? So that is an interesting point. That even though even I still like the film still feels fairly contemporary, but some of those things are not. So it's good to watch that for sure.
Yeah, and so you can kind of pick up on a few things like that throughout the movie, and those type of glaring like things to that make a movie dated are only going to obviously pop up more and more as we keep innovating and keep changing the way society is. We're
Yeah.
always going to be changing, obviously.
Well, the tech
But
moves so
again,
fast, right? It's just
oh, of
yeah.
course it does. But even so, this movie didn't. Even though there were things like that in the movie, as you just said, it doesn't feel old. This doesn't feel like an old timey movie yet.
Mm.
I'm going to call it a classic because I think it is a classic, but it's not an old timey film. But there's so many cool things in this movie. One of my favorite lines in this movie is Shaun runs into that same female friend, and I apologize, I'm forgetting her name. But she just kind of has a cameo, kind of pre-apocalypse and then post-apocalypse.
Oh, and
And
during though,
each
like
time, yeah, like during the apocalypse, sorry, he runs into her before the apocalypse and during the apocalypse,
and then
and then I guess
after.
she's there at the end to
Yeah.
help save him or whatever.
Yeah.
But no, I'm talking about the first two interactions, and they have an identical conversation. I just found that so interesting, and I think it speaks to something a little bit greater. Not to get too deep because that's not what we do, but just like he sees her pre-apocalypse, and they're like kind of just having small talk. How you doing? Oh, just surviving. And then they
Yeah.
see each other during the apocalypse, and it's the exact same thing. Oh, how you doing? Oh, just surviving.
I know that I thought
It
that was
just,
pretty funny too.
I just thought that was so interesting, right? Because really that's how this character Sean led his life. He's just kind of doing what he had to do to survive, not trying to do anything great, just kind of going through the motions, and then he's actually fighting for his life, and he's just doing the same, just surviving. I just thought it was very interesting.
Well, I also found it very interesting. Did you notice like you remember in Zombieland 2 where they everyone meets their doppelganger?
Yes.
They do that at that second meeting, right? So like
Oh, that's right.
all those people following her were exactly like the people following him, right? She had her boyfriend there. She had the friend wearing the weird hat. She had the chubby friend that was always looking at his phone and not really care. Like it was the exact same. I thought that was so funny, man.
And you know what? That is funny. Now that you bring it up, and you know what? I remember the scene identically, and kind of like they cross paths,
Yeah,
and each of like the doppelgangers say hello to each other,
that's
and
right.
so that's so and so that's so right. I didn't make a note of it, but you're bang on. I will say though, the one thing I did make a note of, one of the people in her entourage, and I don't know his name, but he's now kind of a big time actor. He plays Watson on the Sherlock
Yep,
show with
yep,
Cumberbatch.
yep. And he was also in
And it's
the Hobbit movies and all that stuff.
Oh, and yeah, you're absolutely right. And so I kind of like sometimes going back and watching these old shows, these old TV shows, these old movies, and you see these actors who are playing bit parts in these movies who are now like big time actors.
Yeah, yeah,
Which is it's kind of funny to see. It's like, well, everyone starts somewhere.
for sure, for sure. And yeah, I do like watching that as well. One thing I did like in this though is like, well, because there's that other British zombie apocalypse film, 28 Days Later. I was like, I'm so glad that these people don't run like the zombies don't run like the zombies in 28 Days Later. Man, that was so intense.
That's
Did
a
you?
great film.
I
And you know what?
know.
The sequel's a very good film too. We gotta we got to do those for the podcast because both of those are really good flicks, and
For
they're
sure.
being like zombies themselves are obviously terrifying, something that wants to eat you and bite you, but
Yeah.
something that comes at you in a full sprint that wants to eat and bite you, yeah, that's terrifying.
Right. And then it's not like they get tired, right? It's not like they
No.
have to breathe and, like they can run like that forever. That's the worst part about it.
No, but we okay.
uh,
We got to do that one. We have to do that one on a future
for
episode for
sure.
sure.
But
But back,
another thing I want to talk about in this film though was remember they're talking on the phone to his mom
yes,
and she's like, "Oh, don't be a bother. I don't want you to fuss over me and come and get me." And then Ed yells over the phone, "We're coming to get you, Barbara." That's
yeah, yeah,
from
yeah.
that's a total reference to Night of the Living Dead. Remember the part in that movie with the black and white movie with that George Romero directed, and it's like the guy's trying to scare the girl at the cemetery, going, "We're coming to get you, Barbara." Like he kept saying that over and over again. I was like, "Oh my god, they bit a reference in there. That was amazing." I was like, "I really
And
like
and
that."
and that's really funny that you said that. And I gotta say, I'm not like obviously these are classic films, the Living Dead series, but like I can't say I'm an expert at any of those. But one thing I did find in a tidbit in doing some research about this film is apparently there's a ton of references to Romero's films, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead.
Yeah, yeah.
Like apparently there were so many references that Romero was like became like really flattered and impressed
Mm-hmm.
that he gave parts to Peg and Wright for them to appear in his 2005 film Land of the Dead.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they actually had a part for them, and Peg and Wright turned it down and instead decided they wanted to just be zombies rather than slightly more noticeable roles in the movie.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. Yep, that makes
Wait,
sense.
what I did so there you go. So you're more of a film expert than me that you picked up on that, but I guess there was that Barbara reference and many more.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just noticed it like because I don't think I would. I might have noticed it the first time. I can't remember the first time I watched it though. It was a long time ago. The first time I saw this film, so I might have picked up on it then. It just reminded me. But like just watching it again, I was like, oh my god, that's the best. So there was a lot of stuff like because there's only so many things you can do with zombie films, but when you do them right, you don't really notice how similar they are to other ones, right? So it's like the mom that gets bit, right? So like um there's like references to that in the bite from other zombie movies. Like there's just a lot going on in this film, but it's just a lot of fun to watch when it's done this way. Like Simon Pegg's just really fun to watch, and so is his friend Ed, right? Like they're just so fun to watch.
And when she was bit, again, she had that line, John. Oh, I didn't want to be a bother. I didn't want to tell you,
Yeah, no. Oh, it's so
which is
good.
just, I know, so good and so ridiculous. This is one of those movies that it just didn't feel rushed.
Yeah.
Like it felt like they're like we have to do this right.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't say how long it took them to write the script or whether it was longer than it normally would be, but it just felt like they got so many things right in this film. And like even though it is a horror comedy, there isn't too much that you would roll your eyes at or say, "Oh, that's ridiculous."
No.
Uh, just a good ride throughout the movie. And I believe that the production company picked up on how good this script was and gave them a budget, gave them money to pull these things off. Like
Mm-hmm.
kind of the first big kill, I want to say, that Shaun and Ed are a part of, where there's
The woman in the
it's the
background.
in the backyard,
Yeah.
and she kind of impales herself on the post,
Yeah, and then stands up.
stands up, but then the camera's behind her, so
Yep.
you can kind of see through the hole and see like Shaun and Ed's
I
reaction
know.
kind of
Good
through
shot,
the
by the
hole.
way. Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was an amazing shot, but
Mm-hmm.
you can't do something like that cheap, John.
No, for sure. For sure.
And so I just thought that was really cool that when you saw stuff like that, it's just like, oh, there's actually some good special effects in that and good things like that. But like always, I did have an issue I need to bring up.
Go for it.
And I know we give horror comedies more leeway, but the one thing I thought that was so dumb is that when Sean convinces Liz and her, I guess her roommate and her roommate's boyfriend to leave the safety of that high-rise building to make their way on foot to a bar.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's all for comedic purposes because the whole thing is they always go to the bar. He always makes them go to the bar, and again, he's making them go to the bar. But like in a zombie apocalypse, they're literally in probably the best spot they can be for the short term, kind of being in a high rise building.
Yeah, so you had the one character who didn't want to leave, though, right?
Yeah, the guy who kind of had the secret crush on Liz.
Yeah, for sure. And secondly, they thought they didn't think they were going on foot. They thought they were going in the car because he told them that we have a car outside.
Oh, that's right. They did have the car, but even still, it's still a dumb idea to when you got safety like that. Now, if this had been day 16 and they're out of food and they got to start going, then I get that. But in the interim, they were in the perfect spot for safety.
Yeah, I think they were thinking long term though. I don't even know, right? They didn't know when. I don't even know. It just seems to me like a place with food and water is much better than a place without.
Yeah. No, no, yeah,
But
fair
and
enough. But I,
they would have food in their apartment, and they obviously had water in their apartment. I just thought I didn't really have too much of an issue with that because it's more like um, it just seems like you go to a place that you know and that you can barricade and they kept saying that there was a gun over the bar. No one believed that the gun was real, but they did kept like Ed kept bringing up that there's weapons there. So
yeah, 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 yeah.
I don't even know. I didn't have a problem with it.
No, and I get what you're saying, right? But it was just one thing that I'm like, well, I think this is you're in the perfectly safe place now. Why leave?
Mm-hmm.
But again, I get it. And they had to leave because then it brought so many other parts to the movie of them try again. Eventually, the car they end up losing the car. Or I can't even remember what happened, but they ended up on foot eventually,
Well, it just
and
tied everything
and that's
together, right? So, but
exactly.
at the same time, you are right. Like he had to climb up to get into that place, right? So the
Yeah,
zombies, as you saw them, they weren't there yet, right? They're just more like leaning against the door until it broke. You know what I mean? Like they weren't scaling buildings trying to get into places. So it was definitely safer. But it's like one of those things where they broke up in the bar. Um, the bar is like the bane of their existence or their relationship. But then they go to the bar, and then that's where they rekindle their relationship and decide to stay together. You know what I mean? So it's like it just tied everything together, and it's like one of those things where they needed to have it in there.
yeah. I guess it's one of those things where if your relationship's on the rocks, like surviving the zombie apocalypse together is probably going to help reunite you.
Well, that in itself, but I just mean like the bar was the central place, right? Like she broke up
Yeah,
with him in the bar because of the bar, and then he brings her back there, and he gets her back at the bar. Like it's just the location itself was important to some of the plot elements. But
yeah.
I would agree with you in the sense that they were definitely safer in the apartment.
No, no, and you're right there. And so, but obviously they make it back to the bar, and then kind of first of all, like when you get there and you realize that there's a horde of zombies, kind of like preventing you from getting to the bar, like that might be like, okay, time for us to change our plan. But
I know.
I did love the scene when they decide, okay, the best way to get through a horde of zombies is to act like zombies, and they're trying to
Yeah.
like practice rehearsing, and they're like
Yeah.
making, oh, you suck at being a zombie, and they're like, here, oh, well, let's see you do it. Oh yeah, you're so much better. Like I just thought that that was pretty comical, and it was just and I think that's something I liked about this movie is that even though like there's like these horrific situations going on, these characters just never lost their wit and never lost their comedy, and they were just seemed to be eerily calm about everything going on. It just so it worked as a package.
Oh, for sure. Like they fed off each other that way, right? Like if someone got upset, then they were trying to calm them down. Like it just did a good group dynamic actually. Like the secret crush with Liz, and then the mom being there, and then the unresolved issues with the stepdad, and like there was just a really a lot of stuff, really a lot of elements going on here that I think were very well done and very well written and very well put together. It's just like I said, it was just a fun movie to watch. Like if you haven't seen it, like do yourself a favor, right? Like it's a fun movie to watch.
No, no, exactly, right. And as you just said, if you haven't seen it, hop on Netflix. It's on there right now, and you can check it out. That's where we watched it. But just before we get to the reviews here, they obviously make it into the bar, and then they end up getting attacked and lose most of their group. And in the end, I loved it that kind of Ed had a chance to redeem himself a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because it was kind of like Shaun was the only one who liked him, was the only one who saw good in him, and it was kind of Ed kind of helped Shaun and Liz escape in the end.
Yes, he definitely did, and he he did sacrifice himself to do it at the same time, right? So it was fairly interesting, but it's like one of those things where it's like uh, Sean liked having Ed around because they're best friends, but he also liked having Ed around for an excuse not to try. You know,
And
that's
you know what,
that's
that's so true, and I didn't even think of that because even though Shaun wasn't achieving much, Ed was achieving less.
yeah. So it was just one of those things where it's like um, they kind of like he liked having Ed around because I'm not that bad. So you know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like
exactly.
I thought it was a unique aspect to the friendship that was interesting, and I think they, to me anyways, that's what I got from it when I watched it.
No, no, I think you hit the nail on the head there, John. And that was a dynamic that I really didn't put my thumb on, but no, that makes sense. And I loved the ending. I thought that you couldn't have ended this film any better than Sean, I guess Liz begrudgingly letting Sean go out to the shed, and then he gets to the shed, and there's Ed chained up playing video games, and Ed goes to bite him, and Sean just like you would talk to a little child, stop it, what are you doing?
Yeah,
Like I just thought it was for this film, you could not have ended it any better.
no, it's definitely suited the film. Definitely suited the film. I also liked how after Liz moved into the apartment, like, do you remember how the state it was in before? And then she's in
Oh, of
there, and
course.
it's like it's clean, everything's nice, and I'm like, that's so funny. I like how they put that in there.
So typical. But yeah, just a fantastic finish to this film, and I have no idea how many endings they are bouncing around because I guess generally with a film like this where it is that has the comedic elements, I guess you generally don't know where the ending's going to be. But I'm so glad that they finished with that. This was a film though, John. I loved, you loved, critics loved it. 92.
Oh, nice,
Audience loved it as well on Rotten Tomatoes. 93.
nice,
I'm right there with them.
for
I
sure,
I, I
for
I'm in the
sure.
low 90s, if not like a 95.
Yeah, where were we? I think we were high for Tucker and Dale. I have to say, I laughed harder at Tucker and Dale than I did at this one, though. Even though this one's a funny movie, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? Tucker and Dale might be more of a laugh out loud type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't. It's tough for me to say because I know I've gone through before. What are your favorite horror comedies? And I always say Tucker and Dale and What We Do in the Shadows, but like this one has to be on there. But I would say that this one might be a little bit more of a smarter comedy, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
it just has like a dry English wit. You know what I mean? So, it's the comedy is subtle, but it's there and it's fun, but it's not but there is like obviously laugh out loud British comedy. Like if we were, you know, Monty Python's a great example of that, right? But it's like I just mean like Tucker and Dale for me. Like a couple of times like it was hard for me to catch my breath. It was like pretty damn hilarious. But this one still was like still fun, but just fun in a different way. But if I were to go for uh, horror comedy with a strong dose of comedy, I would say Tucker and Dale have it over this one.
And that's tough, and I'd have to sit down and think about it a little bit more. But I will say that this is in my top three. With again, as I said before, Tucker
Mm.
and Dale and What We Do in the Shadows. Like those would be all three of those would be up there. But
Mm-hmm.
you are right. I definitely laughed out loud harder in Tucker and Dale.
Mm-hmm.
This film though successful at the box office, $6.1 million budget. As I kind of talked about before, it did have some money behind it. It ended up bringing in 30 million at the box office.
Nice.
Um, which is nice. But then I would also say too that this film probably did a good job on like DVD and Blu-ray sales, since it
For
is a bit
sure.
of a cult film.
Yeah, for sure.
So it probably made a ton of money there, and it kind of started a bit of a trilogy. Now I don't know if you remember the films. One was called Hot Fuzz, and the other one was
Yep.
something like The End of the World or something like that. And it's kind of starring Simon Pegg, like the main two actors.
Yep.
Obviously different roles, but there's kind of like small connections between them. Uh, three good movies. So obviously this movie was influential, is what I'm trying to get at here.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, it helped launch their careers a bit, right? They're seen as a new talent, so it was good for them.
No, for sure. And Simon Pegg's made some great movies.
Hmm.
Uh, just off the top of my head, I can't think of the name of it, but there's a great one where he's kind of an out of shape slacker and he just decides to run a marathon. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, I haven't seen that one. I forget the name of it too, though.
Yeah, really, really, really funny flick. But no, he's been in some really great ones. But again, as John said, if you haven't seen this one, do yourself a favor, pop on Netflix and enjoy it. You'll have some laughs. You'll be like, oh, I remember that. And again, there's some good shout outs to 16 years ago, as we just said, stuff that you might be like, oh my gosh, I feel so old right now, which is
Hmm.
the feeling I had a few times throughout this movie.
For sure.
Well, buddy, anything else to add on this one?
Nope.
Well, all I can leave you guys with is just to let you know what we're going to be doing next. Next week, we're going to be kind of revisiting back to an independent film. We haven't done an independent film in a while, and we had a filmmaker reach out to us. So, as always, we thought we'd give it a try. This one's name is Hallowed Be Thy Name. You can find some information about it. It's got an IMDb page. So you just Google Hallowed Be Thy Name on IMDb. It's a 2020 film just coming out. Filmmaker Taylor Richard. Uh, and we're going to get into it next week. What worked, what didn't work. It'll be a good discussion. It's an interesting movie.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
But otherwise, yeah. And then giving our honest feedback as we always do.
That's right.
But otherwise, folks, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, check out our Facebook page, and follow us on both Twitter and Instagram at Damn Movies. We want to hear what you thought of today's podcast and any suggestions you have, especially in terms of what movies you'd like us to discuss next. Send us an email to moviesthedamned@gmail.com. Please also check out John's full-length novels. His first two novels, Dollhouse and The Tracker, are Amazon bestsellers. You can also order his novella Bounce, his book of short stories, Four Shots of Horror, and his newest novel, Off the Grid, all available right now on Amazon. For further details on John's other published works, please visit his blog, johnhuntfiction.wordpress.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
That's right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week. Be kind to